Carlson and his pro-Russian takes have made him a bit of a favorite of Putin when it comes to American political pundits. Also, many American journalists have attempted to interview Putin, but were denied. Carlson wasn't risking his safety by doing the interview, but was this interview a GOP hit job designed to weaken the Biden campaign in a heated election season? Or was this simply Carlson marketing to his base, conservative Americans that hate Joe Biden and the Democratic Party? All this being said, the war in Ukraine is still going on. What can we take away from this interview? I have my good friend and Russian and Soviet history scholar, Alexander Herbert, here to go over this with us. I also want to add that after the show, when we go to the champagne room, we'll be doing our first of a multi-part series on Lenin that Alex has been putting together on his Substack as well. So if you want to join Alex's Substack, wherever you are watching or listening to this show on the audio-only podcast, there are links in the description. Also, if you're listening to the show on Apple, subscribe to the channel, and you have access to the champagne room. All that out of the way, let's bring in the man that watched this interview, took notes, was excited for this interview, my good friend and historian, Alexander Herbert.
Oh,
Ming.
got that Ming look going on, dog. Fucking
Ming.
evil tonight, all right?
I mean, if that was the look you're going for, I was like, it's either G.G. Allen or Ming, and I'm really hoping it's Ming.
Yeah, no, I don't do G.G. Allen.
Yeah, see, it's Ming. Yeah, fuck that guy.
I don't do that doo-doo shit, you know what I mean?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry. You were cooking, as the young people say.
You know, you asked me about why the Ukraine war started, and I went on for 30 minutes about Rurik in 883. And people missed the entire explanation that I had for this.
Well, I'll start off again. I'll ask the same question again. And I think now you're probably more comfortable and you'll probably give a much better answer. Now, I also want to preface this by saying originally the show was going to be your Lenin history, and we decided to change things around after the interview happened because you had wrote a post and you were like a multi-part post where you showed Tucker Carlson doing his thing like, I'm going to Russia. No one else is going to Russia. Yeah. And you know why I'm going to Russia? Because I love America. You're like, what?
I'm sure he does.
And so you were saying that Tucker Carlson was based for doing this interview because, you know, when usually when Americans do these interviews, they're very biased and extremely edited, and Putin doesn't like to do them. And he has turned down several journalists that wanted to interview him. So what were your thoughts when you first saw that Tucker Carlson was going to do this interview? What was your first thoughts?
Well, my first thoughts were like everybody else probably. I don't think that Tucker Carlson is the right person to do it. I mean, there's obvious reasons, as you said, that he got the okay to do it. It's because he's an idiot, right? And Putin knows that. Putin is a very, very smart man. I don't think that we should discredit his intelligence at all. For his age, he's definitely smarter than the president that we have right now in terms of wit. But the reason why I said it was based is because Tucker Carlson does have this awareness, at least, that the mainstream media outlets in the United States and in the West have been declined the interview from Putin because those who have interviewed him in the past and those who have applied to interview him, they work for a certain media outlet and they're trying to promote a certain narrative. And so while everybody is saying, you know, Tucker Carlson is promoting the narrative of Putin, it's absolutely correct. I agree with that 100%. But, you know, if somebody from MSNBC or CNN had interviewed Putin as well, that would have also had a narrative. And so for my purpose, you know, I've seen the interviews that Putin has done with, you know, the mainstream Western media. I wanted to see him do an interview with somebody who he did view as a useful idiot. I wanted to see Putin say what he wanted to say without the liberal editorialism, right? I wanted to see the Tucker Carlson editorialism. which is probably more in line with what Putin wanted to say in a genuine way anyway. Even if we don't believe everything that was said, but we can get into that too. So that's why I thought it was based, right? Because I thought that Tucker Carlson saying straight out there that the Western media is corrupt, it's funded by the same people. They have the Western media, Zelensky is all over the news every week. He has become a celebrity in chief.
Mm-hmm.
I think that all of that is true. And so, Tucker Carlson could have just said, I'm going to sit back and let Putin talk for 2 hours. And I would have been like, hell yeah, that's based. That should happen. Americans need to hear what Putin has to say, even if, again, we don't agree with it.
You're trying to keep a straight face. So
Yeah,
the show.
the reverse Hitler mustache, that's a real thing, dog. That's because I'm so anti-fascist that I can't grow the fascist.
You can't even grow the fascist one. It won't even happen. It's like Joe Dirt's facial hair just grows in all white trashy. Like,
for real. That's crazy.
The show starts off with Tucker Carlson trying to ask the tough question. First, he's hey, why'd you invade the Ukraine? And Putin does this thing where, as you said earlier in the original show that we thought was live, that you had never seen an interview where someone was so overmatched. What did you think of the Tucker Carlson question and Putin's history lesson response?
Yeah, I had never seen an interview where the scales of power were so uneven. And like I said, originally, my favorite moment was when Putin pointed out that Tucker Carlson wanted to work for the CIA, and he said, like, we should thank God that they didn't let you in. It was like, damn, because Putin had worked for the Soviet secret services, and so it was clearly him saying, like, look, I did what you wanted to do, and now you're here interviewing me. That was just one of those moments. The other moment was the referring to the moment that you're talking to, the beginning, where Carlson comes straight out and asks him about the Ukraine war. And Putin says, as I understand it, you went to school for history, so let me give you a history lesson.
But Carlson is trying to say, basically, you invaded Ukraine because of NATO and the US. You tell me that you did that. Yes or no?
Mm-hmm.
And Putin says, I never said that. And Carlson's like, but I have the notes. Putin goes, wait a minute. So what did you think of that?
Yeah. So again, I think to go back to the sort of intelligence of Putin, I do think that certain people, I don't know, when you talk to some people that are well read and well knowledge, a lot of them will go back in history and pretty far back in the past to explain something that's happening today, and it does seem circuitous, right? It seems like they're talking about something that's irrelevant, but people do have the ability to tie these things together. And I think that's what Putin was trying to do. And as a historian, like referring to the archives and even giving Tucker Carlson archival documents to be like, well, if you don't believe me, it's in the archives. I think is also one of those, again, strongman kind of defenses. The problem is that only Putin has access to those archives. The Western scholars aren't allowed to view them, and some Russian scholars aren't even allowed to look at them. And so, you could say that it's in the archives, or there's multiple times in the interview where Putin says, "Why don't you ask your leaders?" But
Oof.
we know full well that no matter what, you can ask the leaders, and our leaders won't say anything. So, but we can get into that. I think that in general.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in general, I think that the first part, the historicism that Putin gives, going all the way back to Prince Rurik and his invitation to Russia to lead Russia from Scandinavia, I didn't see really that much wrong with this kind of ancient to early modern and medieval history. The thing to keep in mind is that the categories that we use today, like nation and even ethnicity, they don't really exist back then. Of course, there are different ethnicities, but people don't understand them as such.
Yeah.
And so for Putin, the basis of Ukrainian and Russian brotherhood, or as he calls it, the soul, rests in their mutual adoption of orthodoxy, in their mutual history of being of Rurik and equally being converted to Orthodox Christianity by Vladimir in the 900s. And that's true. I mean, as far as we know, that's all true. There's something called the Russian Chronicles that you can look up and read some of these stories. And some of the stories are really badass. There's like stories about Princess Olga having one of her enemies pecked to death by birds in a grave pit. Like there's some really cool medieval stories in there. But the main ones to take away are about Vladimir Christianizing Russia. And again, there's no categories of Ukrainian and Russian at the time. They are Rus. They are the common people of that region. So I didn't have a problem with that historicism in the ancient period. But for Putin, that's kind of his basis, his defense of the fact that they are brothers, right? We all converted to Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
Then shit got weird, right? Because in the West, you had in the west of Kiev and Novgorod, you had the Polish and Lithuanian Catholics, and in the east, you had the Mongolians that came in and conquered most of Russia, but left some cities free or virtually free, like Kiev and Novgorod, the free city. And so, what Putin was inferring from that is that this influence of Poland on the western border of the former lands of the Kievan Rus is the first instance of this forced conversion of people who were of the same Russian background. So again, for him, this is done through religion. The Polish people or the Polish-Lithuanian Empire was determined to convert the people in present-day Western Ukraine to Catholicism. And this is where you get kind of religions that faiths that lie in between Orthodoxy and Catholicism, like Ruthenian, which is the old word for Ukrainian, more or less. But they have their own church, right? You get Protestants later on, after the Reformation, they start to enter through the Western borderlands. But in general, that Western part of Ukraine is where you get a whole hodgepodge of people who are Slavic, but they differentiate themselves based on their religion, not on their ethnicity, not on their nationality. Again, those terms don't exist, but based primarily on their religion. But for Putin, that's important. For us, maybe not so important, but for Putin, that's the important part.